Let's see. First question I have for you, Jan, is how's launch day going?
And of course, it's snowing like crazy up here, so I'm not sure anybody's going out to place any bets. But I'm really anxious. We actually have gaming commission meetings both tomorrow and Wednesday in Jeff City. So I'm really anxious to hear from the staff. How folks have indicated that the launch has gone, but I haven't heard anything. So maybe that's a good sign, right? That there aren't any problems, at least that. Anybody is calling to report.
What are Missourians able to do now that sports betting is live?
Well, they're able to do, obviously, any of the mobile platforms they're able to bet on. And I know there was some pre-registration, that had been going on, in recent days to allow people to go out and place those wagers, just as soon as we went live last night at midnight. And so, yeah, I will be interested to hear, and I don't know that there will be, anybody from the industry that will be there to report to us at our meeting in Jeff on Wednesday. But I'm sure that people will be, placing bets. Obviously, Monday Night Football, tonight, and people will be, looking to place those bets. And so, seems like just another day, business as usual. But if I'm sure if you were to talk to someone who was very interested in us going live, that they've had the opportunity to place that wager because, again, with mobile apps, you don't need to go anyplace physically, like what people in Missouri had been complaining about for such a long time that they were having to drive across the state line in order to place that bet, and obviously that's not happening now.
So, what all went into preparing for today?
Oh my gosh. Well, I know everyone wanted us to be live before now, although the initiative petition, that the voters voted on last November, required us to be live by December 1st. But all of the rule making, putting all of those rules on paper. And I've always said to folks that if there was any advantage to being relatively late to the game, it was that our staff had the opportunity to look at what was working in other states, those best practices that other states, had the opportunity to test, and so to make sure that our rules were the very best of the best that we looked at, over the time, after the initiative petition passed. But then, also the development of the entire application process, and the application part of this process is extensive. There's a lot of information that's required of every applicant. We had over 2,400 applications that came in. I know, I see the surprised look on your face. And all of those applications have to be vetted. And that's your financial background, your criminal history, all the places that you've lived and worked, and all of that has to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that it's appropriate for you to receive a license. And so all of that has been taking place. So, if folks thought that, the MGC was just sitting around waiting for December 1st to come, that was not the case because they've been working really hard to get all those things in place.
I can only imagine. And sports gambling has really made such a big boom in the last few years. And it's really reassuring to know that the work went into place so that even the recognizable names like FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, the list goes on, that they're all certified safe for
Mhm.
Missourians. So that's very
Well,
exciting.
and that is an important point. I'm glad that you brought that up. That certainly the Missouri Gaming Commission has a responsibility to vet all those people in the industry, and we work very, very closely with the industry. But first and foremost, we are protecting the citizens of Missouri. We want to make sure that no one falls prey to anyone that has not been vetted appropriately, and all of that takes lots of time, lots of rules, and making sure that those people who do apply, have the right to get a license.
So, what should Missourians know about the law they passed and about what they're now able to do that they may not be thinking about?
Well, certainly, there's a lot of variety out there, and that's probably confusing to folks, to think, do I use this app? Do I use this app? Do I use, a retail app that's physically located at a casino or a sports book, somewhere. But then again, there are mobile apps that, you could use if you were in a stadium and it's not necessarily the mobile app that that stadium or that sports team has partnered with. So, there's a lot of, and again, the initiative petition, that the language is very complicated. I don't necessarily recommend to anyone go out and read the law because that'll tell you exactly what you need to know. But it's true. Our process was somewhat different in the state of Missouri because it did happen as a result of the initiative petition. So it was an amendment to the Missouri Constitution. So it wasn't a piece of legislation that, worked its way through, the legislative process, with the House of Representatives and the Senate. And so we really were bound by that language that was contained in that initiative petition and didn't have the opportunity to, say, tweak it or change it ever so slightly because it is a constitutional amendment. And so, the place to find, what those rules mean is contained in that petition because that's what we were bound by. So, when folks are thinking, gosh, I wonder why, I get this question a lot. I wonder why they only picked two untethered licenses. Why there were only DraftKings and Circa were the only two untethers. And that's because that was the language that was contained in the initiative petition. And so we are bound by that and not able to say, well, gosh, we'll just pick three or we'll only pick one because the language of the constitutional amendment, binds us to selecting two.
So tethered versus untethered, where's that line?
Tethered is actually partnered with a sports team or a casino, or so they are actually tethered to or partnered with, one of those entities that I mentioned. The untethered, again, the two that were allowed by the initiative petition, being Circa and DraftKings, were the ones that were ultimately picked, do not have to partner with anybody. So they are untethered to any other type of provider.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So what is the Gaming Commission's role as a governing body in all of this?
Well, obviously, we make sure that the rules get followed. And certainly when people don't follow the rules, and this is true, this has been true with the MGC, all along. If people aren't following the rules, there are disciplinary consequences, fines or, revocation of license or suspension of license, those kinds of things. So, providing that oversight and making sure that people are following all the rules, whether it's in the industry or it's, a private citizen, that is our responsibility. And then a primary responsibility of the MGC is to make sure that the money that is generated, the revenue that comes from, casino gambling or sports wagering, that it gets passed through to the charitable causes that it is supporting. So, in the case of sports wagering, that it gets passed through to education, and that's a responsibility of the MGC. The same it's been for the last 30 years as we have passed through over $1 billion to education, to the National Guard, to the Veterans Administration. So all of those things that betting or wagering in the state of Missouri has supported for all of these years, it's the MGC's responsibility to make sure that those funds get passed through.
Okay, two more questions, and I'll cut you loose. I know you got a tight timetable.
Thanks.
Of course, how can gamblers stay safe?
Well, a number of the platforms, and I was really impressed, when we heard those presentations about those untethered providers, about, what safeguards they have in place if individuals feel like, maybe they are experiencing, gambling addiction issues, that they have cooling off periods and they have programs in place that allow those wagers to step away. And so, I think the important thing is, the recognition that perhaps, that you have an issue, That's easier said than done sometimes. And obviously, our mental health providers are going to, here in the state of Missouri, are going to get a portion of that funding to make sure that their programs are providing the outreach so that individuals know where they can go to get help. But sometimes it's the recognition of the people around them that maybe they are experiencing an issue, and I guarantee you we're going to be keeping a close eye on that as well, because that's been a concern. That was a concern for our voters when it passed in November, that it was going to be too easy for folks, and certainly we looked at that in other states as we were creating the rules.
Of course. And last question here. What are you and the MGC watching for over the next few days, weeks, months, the near future?
Well, I mean, what I just mentioned, obviously, we want to see, how the mental health community is responding, to maybe a perceived concern that problem gambling is on the uptick. But we're going to be looking at the funding, the revenue that's being generated for this, and I have said to people repeatedly in interviews, I hope it makes a lot of money. I hope that a whole bunch of money goes to education, because, it doesn't come to the MGC. We pass it through and it goes to education. It goes to those other worthy causes, that I mentioned. But because I would love to see a lot of that, money go, where it's been designated, I hope it's very successful. And obviously, we're going to be looking at the revenue. We're going to be watching that really closely, and watching for, any upticks in problem gambling, and all of those things. So, as I said, we have meetings both tomorrow and Wednesday in Jeff City, and I'll be interested to hear, how the staff reports that, go live. But so far today, it's been kind of business as usual. So, so we'll be watching really closely for all of those other things, that sports wagering is going to impact.
Well, I hope things continue to go very smoothly.
Yeah, me
Definitely a
too. I got my fingers crossed.
very exciting time, but thank you so much for taking the time, Jan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Trey. Sorry, like I said, sorry for that kind of hiccup, but I will say to you what I've said to everybody. Check back with us. Obviously, as you alluded to, in the coming weeks and months, how are we doing? We have a pretty full agenda for our meeting on Wednesday, but I'm 100% sure we'll be hearing from the staff. And we're actually recognizing the staff that was responsible for putting all those rules together. We're recognizing them at the meeting on Wednesday because of all the hard work that they put in. So, yeah, more to come, but stay in touch.
I absolutely will. Thank you so much again, Jan.
Okay, absolutely. Have a good day.
All right, you too.